So good evening all. Am I audible now? So shall we start our session? I believe it's already 10 minutes. Okay. So we shall start our session. Introducing myself, I'm Professor Anup Matthew. Actively involved in entrepreneurial development, and basically I'm a professor for the past 1.5 decades, and basically I belongs to Kerala, and mentoring the people there in the colleges as well as the business schools to come out as young entrepreneurs and to facilitate them to start up their own ventures in the shorter span of time. Okay. So I had been working with the industry institution interaction cells that's basically supported by Kerala Technological University, that's a state-run university. And I was a mentor over there with the startup mission. And right now I'm just mentoring a couple of startups as well as providing basically fintech supports them. Okay. That's all about me. And I hope all of you are IIBM students. I believe majority of you are IIBM students, or you are the alumni of IIBM. So is that good to go? Ready to start our session? At any point of time, feel free to ask any doubts. You can unmute yourself and feel free to ask any doubts. Okay. So this one is sorry. So this one is basically a 70-minute session, and 10 minutes you have time to interact with me. And at any point of time, as well as at the end of the session also, you can clarify your doubts. So I believe it's clear for you. Can anyone confirm? I'm audible, I'm good to go, and we shall start our session. Okay, great. Okay, fine. Okay, Fauzi, thank you. So today's session is all about basically it's analyze your startup plan. I believe all of you know what is a startup, and majority of our youngsters there in India, they always dream about starting a small or big venture and make that to the next levels. And in future, they will dream that the venture the firm will be listed there in the stock exchanges and amass a lot of money, will be the CEO and all those things. So before that, you should know whether your idea that you have conceived that is viable enough to roll out as a startup. That's the most important thing. So before you roll out your venture or implement your startup, if you are not doing a viability study, the main drawbacks will be, one thing is obviously that will be a flaws. That means that will be a failure model. Second one is you are investing time as well as the money. Even money in future you can recoup in some way or another. But unfortunately, as a youngster, when you spend time for something, to say that's a 1 year or 2 year or whatever it is, how small it is, that you can't compensate in your entire span of time. Especially if you are a youngster under 30 years of age, each and every day, each and every hour of your life is very valuable in nature. So before you venture into something, before you roll out any of your ventures, make sure that you have done enough or more studies on your venture. That's what we are today going to discuss. So you have to analyze your plan and know, in simple terms, you can say, you should know whether your plan, your idea about a startup that you are going to roll out will be profitable or not. Things are very simple. If that's profitable, you will stick on with that. Else, you'll drop that and go with some other jobs. Okay. So that's what we are going to discuss now. So whether the presentation that I am sharing is visible to you, can anyone confirm? Is the PPT is visible to you? Okay, Fauzi, good to go. Okay, others also can just actively participate. Okay, I love to at least hear to hear your sound also. Okay, so it's good. Okay, so we shall. So I always, as suggested, I always encourage you to have a pen and paper with you, handy with you, so that at least you can note it down, note the points, whatever you feel that's useful for you. Especially, this is not like a theoretical subject. This is something that you can implement in your life, especially if you have any plans to go out with a startup, small startup company. Okay, so let's roll. So the first question, simple. Those I hope already everybody knows what's a startup or everything, but those who are don't know or just for the custom sake, I'm telling basically what's a startup. A startup is a company or a project undertaken by an entrepreneur to seek, develop, and validate a scalable business model. Now you may ask, what's the difference between starting any other business or any other company and a startup? Okay, the last word that given, that's validate a scalable business model. Scalability is the main thing in startups. That means basically you are conceiving your idea as a business or a project in startups, unlike many other companies. In many other companies it's not like that. In companies, if you start, for example, if Reliance Industries start a Reliance Petroleum, or even in the last generation, someone start a software company like Patni Computers or Wipro, that's pretty much old, or Emphasis or any such things. It was actually started not like a startup, but it as a company. That means they have a clear-cut idea about what to do, but they don't have any. Most probably they will have a project, but in startups probably may not have a ready-made project at hand, and they will invest the entire money as a all. If they can't find enough or more money, what they will do is they will go for loans and invest it in a, most probably that will be in a single shot itself. But in the case of startup, the idea, the concept does matter. The most valuable or the most expensive thing in any startup is nothing but the idea. Okay, not the investment or the hardware that involved in that, but the idea. That's most important in startup, and that idea should be scalable. What is meant by the scalability? That means, for example, if you are going to launch an app, Android app to say, for example, if you take an Android app, so in that case, scalability means what? If you are going for an Android app that need to say learn Hindi language, okay, or to say if that's a small translator from Bengali to Hindi, what do you think about this translator app? It's scalable, but at the same sense, it's not scalable to a very great extent. Who will be needed for this? Who will be the primary users of this particular app? The primary users will be no one other than the Bengalis who doesn't know Hindi, because they only need to translate from Bengali to Hindi, or in other words also. Okay, but still that's not greatly scalable. But on the other hand, if you just imagine some company that provides some local shops information, if you just take the app and put that in that app, just like Google Map, if you say, okay, I need to find a grocery shop near to me, just put grocery shop near to me. It will find the grocery shops that's in and around you based on the distance that will be listed, just like a Google Maps. This one is scalable throughout the world because this can be used everywhere, not there in Bengal or Hindi speaking lands or in India, or not like that. Everywhere it can be used. So the scalability scale from small to a bigger ella, that is possible. So for all the startups, that's the first thing you have to envision. It should be scalable from a prototype to a bigger model. Then only it can grow. Okay. I hope you got the understanding of startup. Okay. Usually we used to say, whatever, even someone start a shop also. He used to call it as a startup. Okay. Nothing wrong in that, but basically that's not the basic idea of startup. Okay. Can anyone give a few well-known startups names? Okay, you can unmute your mic and tell a few startups. Everybody knows, right? Some startups are very famous also. Can anyone tell? Yes, Sajay, can you contribute at least one startup name? Am I audible? I hope I am audible to you.
Yes, sir. You are audible. Yes.
Okay, then Shashi, can you just name one startup that first comes into your mind? Okay, no issues, no issues. Okay, okay, I will show you a few startups. That's, okay, these are the famous startups that's in India. Okay, first one is 197. That's our Paytm. Everybody knows it, I believe. That was one of the startup, and it's a funding value. Let me. Okay. And it's a funding that's in US dollar. That's a 4.4 billion was the funding, and Ola Cabs, that's in transportation, 3.8 billion. Oyo Hotels, Oyo Rooms, that's a 3.2 billion that involved in travel and tourism. Renew Power, that's in energy. Snapdeal, e-commerce website. Swiggy, Byju's, Big Basket, Delivery, that's a courier company. Zomato. All these are well known to us. All these people, all these startups were successful also. Unsuccessful failure models of startups, that all were many that we couldn't able to recognize. Okay, so let's move forward. So the valuable question is, why startups are attractive to new generation job aspirants? Okay. The first reason is the autonomy over your work. That means if you think that you can able to come out with an idea, and if you are working as an employee in some other company, what really happens? You have a lot of idea, but unfortunately, you are working under someone for your livelihood, and you need to work for them with their ideas. So there is no autonomy. You can't work as per your wish. You can't implement your creativity at work. This is obviously always a depressing moment for everyone who has better ideas in mind. So startups basically enable you, encourage you, uh, make you able to come out with your idea to implement. Second thing is it's valuable career experience. You need not think that all the startups, unlike the previous generation. Previous generation business people are separate creed of people, and employees that separate breed of people. But here, basically, startups are nothing like. Startups are obviously startup people, serial entrepreneur. These people are basically they are taking starting startups as a job. That's the serial entrepreneurs. They are creating or making startups, making small company. That's their job. Okay, so that itself they have taken that as a career. That's the main reason why if you just think about our Zomato CEO, he offloaded all his what to say thing. Yeah, can you mute? So he offloaded all his stake there in the Zomato, and with that money he started another company. So making startup itself taken as a career. That's as a job. Make a startup, grow, make it grow. Once it's being grown, exit from that. Give that company to someone else and start another one. Make it grow, offload it. Okay. And third one is the flexibility. Flexibility means you can do or you can implement or you can create your workspace as per your wish and your will. This is the most attractive thing for any youngsters. No one will restrict you. No one will restrict your creativity. No one will restrict your movement. But you can keep your target as sky itself and you can grow with it. And the fourth thing is you become a sort of a talent in the market. Why? Because entrepreneurs generally considered as one of the sought after asset for any company. That means you will act like an entrepreneur within a bigger company. But the same thing only we are doing as a startup entrepreneur. So once you successfully create a startup and offload it, then what happens? Everyone will prefer you. Even bigger companies will prefer you. Yes, Mahima, can you? I think you raised an hand, right? Manisha, right? Okay, Manisha. Okay, Manisha, do you have any doubts? Okay, I think that's accidentally raised. Okay, no issues. Okay. And the last one, that's the dreams. It's a billionaire fever. We know that even with many startups, at the age of 20 or 25, in that age, they have started a small startup. Even right after their business schools, they have started a small startup. Whether how small it is, also after that, you get a lot of seed fundings and everything. Seed fundings and everything. And at the end of the day, just like Freshworks, they went to the US and listed there. That's a phenomenal dream work. This is what the youngsters of India is dreaming to. And that's one of the major drive behind all the youngsters now dreaming about a startup company. Why I can't also start a startup company and reap the benefits out of that. Within 5 years or 6 years, I can be a billionaire. That's the dream that generally youngsters are driving with. We can't blame anyone, but that's a fact. And let's move forward. And still, we told about a lot of good things about startup, but the darker side of startups also you have to keep it in mind. And this slide basically lays the foundation or the necessity of today's discussion. That's the unpleasant side of the startup. So in 2019, by Bloomberg, as per their data, it says that the failure rate of startups was around 90%. In 2021, that has been reduced to 85%. And research concludes that 21% of startups fail in the first year itself. Without seeing it second year, 21% itself, that will be reaching there in the without going to, am I audible to everyone? Because someone told me that
Yes,
it's not audible.
you are audible. Yes, sir. I
Yes,
think
sir.
right now, no problem, sir.
Okay,
Yes, now audible.
okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you. So, in the first year itself, almost 21% of the startups that fail. That means almost 1 in every 5 startups fail in the very first year itself. And 30% cumulative will be failed in the second year. And 50% in the fifth year, and by 70% will turn into a non-profitable thing by within a decade. This is the darker side. Why it's happened? Because that's just because of the startup hype. We know about the startup that has flourished only. The list of startup I have shown you. That's a Zomato or Swiggy or Freshworks or all those people are there. They have become millionaires, billionaires in fact. And with that perception, college students immediately after the graduation, they are jumping into starting with a startup with their parents' money, but unfortunately, without much plan or much feasibility study on the idea they have, that won't be successful. You should have a unique idea. Never try to copy others, except some aggregator business like a Swiggy or anything. Okay. So this is the hard fact, dark fact, unpleasant fact that's in front of us. All of you have to keep this thing in your mind. This is the cornerstone of today's discussion. This is the reason why we are conducting this session. Okay. How we can be a successful startup entrepreneur without being got into this 90%. We need to become the first 10%, the successful entrepreneurs come out after 10 years. Okay, let's see how we can. And what's the main reason for failures? First reason is the funds, initial funds that ran out. Why? Because of the poor cash flow management. Simple. It's as simple as that. Hardly, especially youngsters, they have a habit of overlooking the cash flow. Whether that's in the case of what to say, whether that's in the case of the domestic, whether that's in the case of the domestic cash flow management, plus for our home also, we are somewhat hesitant to go through it. Okay, thank you, Faisi, for your input. Okay, so what happens is once they collect some money from your friends or near or dear ones or parents, assume that you are starting a startup with a 50 lakh rupees. In no time, I assure you, in no time, unless and until you have a very good skills with cash flow management, this 50 lakh will be depleted within a month itself. I have seen a lot of people, they have started their startup, they hire a very good space first, they will make a very good interiors, they will go after even investing lakhs on advertisements. After that, what happens? Nothing happens. They couldn't able to generate sales, they couldn't able to generate revenue. There starts the first red alert on startups. Okay, that's the first reason. Second reason is you are in the wrong market. What's the wrong market? Wrong market means, assume that you are trying to sell black hair dye there in the US or in the Europe. Do you think that will be a successful market? On the other hand, if you sell the very same in India, that will be okay. Okay, so okay, so you should choose the correct, right market. Then only you can be a successful person. All those things involved in the viability study. And the fourth one is somewhat you can read along with the second one. That's a lack of research. If you do right research on market as well as the product and the simulation on your ideas, In that case, obviously, at least you can find some break even within a decade or so. And the fourth one is the bad partnerships. That makes a lot of sense. Majority of the people nowadays, we can't start as a proprietorship, that the scalability is very low. At least you should start as an LLP, limited liability partnership. So you need to find a partner. At least two people are needed for LLP, limited liability partnership. So the partner does matter. Who is a partner? What he or she is doing? What's your partner's ambition? What's your partner's drive? Is she or he is just a sleeping partner? All those things does matter in the success of a venture. So if you get into a bad partner, or if you end up with a bad partnership, just because you are sourcing money from them or you have become a financial monetary partner, that partner sometimes may become a burden to you. Many partnerships, many ventures, they launched with the big, good, viable idea, and they moved up with very good cash flow management. But unfortunately, because of the conflict within the partners, made the things a mess. So that's the fourth reason is also very important. And fifth one, that's ineffective marketing. That's what I told. Many people make that very same mistake. They will spend a huge amount on marketing just by thinking that big companies, they are spending huge amount in the market and I need to make a brand name, so and so. But unless and until you have an eye on the cash flow management, without an eye on cash flow management, if you spend on marketing, you will end up nowhere. And the final one is not being an expert in the industry. If you think that, for example, if you are an historian, if you have finished all your post graduation and everything there in the history, and your competency in IT is very low, to say it's in fact it's poor, and just because of the fact that the IT companies or these kind of cloud management companies, they are making good money, just because of that you started a IT company without knowing the dynamics of IT company, rather, or without knowing the business dynamics of it. Obviously, you won't wonder. Most probably, you will end up in loss. So, you should start ideas that's somewhat known to you. You need not have an academic qualification on that. You need not be a computer science engineer, but you should have a fair idea about what you are going to do. Okay. If you don't know, that will be the one reason of failure. Now the question is, if you are an aspiring entrepreneur to start a startup, how we can analyze before starting or before investing your money and efforts to it? This is one method. That's Alexa Osterwald's business model canvas. Basically, that seems to be just like in the case of many other business model analytics. This is somewhat one of the easiest method, as well as viable, very good, easy to understand method to analyze your ideas without conceptualizing it. It's not a simulation, but it's somewhat in a quantitative analysis in nature. Okay. So let's move forward. Alexa Oswald, basically the canvas is a strategic management template. I'll show you the template, then you'll get a better understanding of it. It's basically a strategic management template that generally helps business to describe, design, and analyze the business models, whether that's viable or not in all terms in the sense whether that business model is viable, whether the cash flow management that will be viable, whether you can find a break even at all. Sometimes some of the business you might have seen, maybe your nearby grocery shop, nearby hardware shops, generally that's a classic example, nearby hardware shops that sell steel or cement. You might have seen that that particular person has started that cement or hardware shop started almost 20 to 30 years back. Still his business volume having that much increased. it's almost like a saturated, stagnated business. Scalability is not there. Sometimes, though you are not in a loss, you may not be able to scale it up. So all those things you will get an idea of Alex Oswald's business model canvas. So the canvas was this concept was basically invented by Alex Oswald. This business theorist, and during his PhD research, he devised, he designed, or he conceptualized this analysis model. So I'll show you the template. This is the basic template. Okay, so this template in a simple terms, usually what we used to do during these entrepreneurial trainings, this will be a big, what to say, whiteboard. It will be either pre-printed or drawn like this. It's in a big whiteboard. The first one is key partners and key activities. All those things, put that in blocks, so that the analysis will be much easier. Okay. Nowadays, it's not a great thing to analyze this in, because also what's model analysis softwares are available. Strategic model softwares are available. That's much easy. But for the theoretical understanding, I'm telling this. Okay. The left top, you can find the key partners. And right hand side of that, these are key activities, key resources, value proposition, customer relationships, channel, customer segments, revenue streams, cost structure. So this one is devised or arranged in a square, in a rectangle. The area, the actual area that allocated for each head. For example, key partners. Okay, so each head, I think, is basically based on the weightage. For example, key activities that has lesser area when compared to key partners. So the weightage for key activity is lesser than key partners. Okay, Sherry Goswami, I think you raised a hand. Sherry, do you have any queries? Okay, I think that's by accident, no issues. So you should keep it in mind that the area that we have allocated for every head, that's based on the weightage. That means what? Here you can find key partners. That has double the area that we have allocated for key resources. What does it mean? That means the importance of key partners, that is double that of the importance of key resources. That's what I told. Selecting a wrong partner may end up your entire plans. Okay, so these are the main components: key partners, key activities, key resources, value proposition, customer relationship, channel, customer segments, cost structure, and revenue streams. So we're going to discuss all these things one by one. Then you'll get a better understanding of the scenario. So the first and most important thing is the value proposition. You know that that value proposition is given there in the center, right? So value proposition basically means that the product of the service the firm basically intends to offer to the customer to meet their needs. Okay, what you are going to offer? Are you going to offer a mobile app, or are you going to offer offer something that hard in nature? That means it's not like a software. Or are you going to offer something as a service? Whatever it is. And second point, it is unique to an organization and it sets apart from its competitors. That's what the value of your company, your idea decides. For example, if you are starting a grocery shop, but unfortunately another grocery shop is near to your home itself, and if you just go and start another grocery shop near to that grocery shop, how can you put this value proposition over there? Either you have to say that all the what to say, vegetables or your pulses, everything I have sourced right from the farmers or right from the farms. That's the value proposition that you can project over there. Else, the old grocery shop person can claim a lot of heritage over that area. He will have the upper hand than starting a new one over there. He gained the trust over there. But in order to overcome the competitor's edge, you have to put forward some unique things towards the customers. Okay. And discussion may be qualitative, outlining the intent outcome, customer experience, basically quantitative describing the efficiency and pricing. So the pricing part, basically that's the last one, because pricing for a startup, pricing need not be a great thing. Why I'm telling so? Because I have seen a lot of startups, they went for aggressive pricing by compromising the quality of the product, quality of the service, and uniqueness. But unfortunately, the problem is we are not Ambani's. Ambani can uh, afford the expense that incurred for giving geo phones for free. He has given 6 months free. He could able to afford that. But unfortunately, heavily discounted prices we can't afford as a startup. That you can sustain on hardly for a few months only. So I'm a bit pessimistic, a bit back foot on the pricing part, but rest of the uniqueness part, I am very much enthusiastic about that. Okay, that's the value proposition. Okay, so as a startup, when you think about an idea, for example, if you are thinking that, okay, I'm going to start a jalebi business. Okay, online jalebi. Good, well and fine. In your area, if someone is very much, I think everybody in North, they are fascinated with the jalebi. In the evenings, they can have jalebi, hot jalebis. You have to think about the value proposition. What value proposition you can offer over other bakeries? Other bakeries, they made that and the shelf life is almost 3 to 5 days. They can keep it there. And for till the next 5 days, they can sell that, but it's not hot. But the value proposition that you have to give is nothing but it's hot jalebi. It need not say that it's hot jalebi. That should be hot. It should reach the customer's hand with warmness. It should be hot. How you can transit it? Use a thermocol container. Now it's banned. So you have to find some other, you have to research for some other alternatives to keep it warm. That's the value proposition that you are offering for that jalebi. Okay, that's the value. Unless and until you find a value proposition for your idea or your product, you need not think about anything else. Drop that idea, start thinking about another idea, or you start thinking about a value proposition that you can offer with that particular product. And second one is the infrastructure. Okay, infrastructure matters a lot. Okay, so this key partners, key activities, and key resources, all these three we can classify together as the infrastructure. The key partner, you know that the resource, key resources and key partners both comes together, because why we are calling for partnerships. One thing is we need manpower, we need ideas, we need people who are able to think, we need someone to assist us. That may be the one reason. He need not be an investor. And second one is he may be an investor and he may be helping you in the operations also. Okay. In both these cases, the resources includes the manpower as well as the partners. Both these things are very important. And that these things, these working partners are the primary infrastructure of any concept and company, not the big buildings. The primary infrastructure are the working people, are the working partners. They not just work with the physics, but they should be able to work with the brains also. That means they should be able to give you idea and timely ideas, and they should be able to come with you for firefighting. Obviously, in some cases, you may reach to some sort of what to say, loss, at the brim of loss, or loss may be something starting. In that case, you have to start your firefighting methods to revive this thing. If you are alone doing that thing, if your partner is somewhat lethargic, that's the end of everything. So you should think about the infrastructure in terms of partners, in terms of resource also, and the key activities that also involves with the infrastructure. Because, for example, in the case of Swiggy or Zomato, if you take, okay, anyway, they are okay with the partners. That's why it's surviving. What about the key activities? Key activity is nothing but they are doing an aggregator business, just like Uber or Ola. Nothing more than that. They are aggregating the hotels, restaurants, and they are marketing that particular platform to the end user. People like you and me. Why? Because unless and until you know or I know about some platform called Swiggy or Zomato is there, how can I download it? So I need to convey the message that we are food aggregators. Download it. You can get in touch with many restaurants around you, not just one, many. Okay. So the key activity is that. Secondary activities are many. Even you can give some, what to say, ad in front of them. I think Zomato or Swiggy, they are giving the same thing. I think you can open a Citibank credit card, apply for a Citibank credit card. Okay, they are just acting like a referral partner. Once you apply it, and if you are allotted with a Citibank credit card, just like a channel partners commission, Swiggy also will get. But that's not the key activity. Key activity generally considered as a primary activity. So that also you have to write it down. What are the key activities? So usually when you make a big white board, make sure that you write all the small things. And 2 or 3 people involved in your startup, write all the things under key activities. And after that, brainstorm it and wipe out a few which are irrelevant in nature. Key resources. What are the key resources? Primary thing is the monetary resource, that's money, usually funding. Second one is the manpower, workforce. Whether partners are enough, you have to think about it. If not, you have to hire a few people. Then you have to revisit your strategy, financial strategy. Are you able to offload some money towards hiring people to meet the PF? All those things are mandatory. Can you able to hire an ERP software, accounting software? How much you have to pay for that monthly? All those things comes under this infrastructure. Okay, and this is what I told. And the third point that you can find at the bottom left is the cost structure. Many startup I have seen went into failure just because of they have no idea about the cost structure. The pricing itself, I think majority of you are MBA management stream people. The pricing itself is a bigger topic. Costing is a separate one. So unless and until you find the right costing, unless and until you find the right costing at the right time and the right place, you will be doomed. That's the main problem. Unless and until, okay, unless and until you have an idea about costing, it will be. For example, in the case of Zomato itself, you take. Zomato says that our delivery charge is 40 rupees. Okay, you need not think about the operational cost or anything. Just think about the delivery charge. If you buy 2 biryani from nearby shops and 1 biryani costs 150 rupees, 300 rupees, and Zomato says, okay, this one, 40 rupees, I'm taking as the delivery charges. Nothing wrong in that, but unfortunately, the problem is okay, okay. But unfortunately, the problem is if unfortunately the problem is if the delivery person, the delivery boy, the delivery partner who is riding on motorcycle, he is spending more than 40 rupee on his fuel expenditure. Do you think, though this cost is not directly affecting Swiggy, do you think this business model will be a successful one? No, because after a couple of days, your delivery partner will leave you because he need to take the biryani from the restaurant and leave that to the end user. And by delivering that, he spent almost 50 rupee towards the petrol bill. And Swiggy is giving 40 rupee. Then who will take that assignment? So what happens? After a few days, you won't get any delivery partner. Most probably the partners itself have to take and deliver the biryani. So that is another concern. Though all these things you have to take into account. The costing basically very much close to that of the infrastructure. That's a separate bigger topic, bigger rela. Generally, that's the entrepreneurial development programs, bigger things. Our time is somewhat limited. So that's a basic thing about the costing. So all these things, that means they could fixed cost also you have to take it into consideration. That means employee salary, rent for premises, variable cost, and scope, other scopes also. The scalability scope also. So why we are thinking about the scalability means what I found is many of these people, generally we do some viability study for these so-called startups. What I found is the youngsters, they are very much aggressive in nature. But unfortunately, they hardly have any long vision towards the future. If they find some trade-off on numbers, for example, the expenditure, okay, expenditure is 2 lakh rupees per month, and the projected revenues, how to say, projected profit, that is 2 lakh 1,000. Okay, well and good, we shall start. It's all set, fine. This is the right costing, right model, everything they will conclude like that. But the question is, with 1,000 rupees, where is the figure of safety? What allowance you can give? For example, the very next day, if a couple of hartals came or a couple of lockdowns came, what you can do? This very menial break-even money can be depleted in a couple of days. So always you have to keep at least 10 to 15% of figure of safety. That means if you feel that the expenditure is 2 lakh, you leave about the profit or other scalability things, at least you have to have the profit of 2 lakh 10,000 rupees, 5% at least. So that we can at least find a trade-off, we can at least find a break-even with that. Else, it won't be a successful one. Okay. And apart from that, the next thing is about the scalability. If you are going with your profit as well as your expenditures balanced, where is the option for scalability? No, you can't scale your business up. You can't move out or you can't raise the business to many. This is what actually happened to Snapdeal. They made the very same problem. Snapdeal had the very same problem. Okay. Okay, Fauci.
Yes, sir. Before we move from this page, regarding the safety margin, 5% is above the base calculation. That's right?
Yeah, exactly.
5% above. Thank you.
Okay, Fauci, thank you. So I told about the basic some example only. We need not take that into a serious one. Just for example. So figure of safety margins generally we have taken nowadays. We need not bother much about it. Everything is in the software. Okay, let me put. Okay. So how much you have to put this figure of safety, or to say it's a safety margin? That's basically industry specific, sector specific. Okay. There is no hard and fast rule. For example, you can't put a figure of safety that you are putting for an IT company. That may not be sometimes sufficient for a capital goods company. Okay. So sector wise, industry wise, okay, safety margins you have to fix. Okay. I think a few are coming. Let me admit. Okay, I believe everyone. Sorry. Okay. Okay, let's move forward now. Okay, let's move forward. So the next one is the customers. This is somewhat tricky, to tell the fact. It's tricky. At least 30 to 40% of the business goes into a failure mode just because of the failure in, let me admit, why it's not successfully admitting, I don't know. Okay. So because of the customer matrices, mainly because of the fact that this one is somewhat tricky, because a lot of customer psychology involved in it, and that customer psychology is somewhat very much dynamic also. It's not that much static in nature. That psychology may differ from one place to another, one location to another, one season to another, and age to age that differs. So this one seems to be a somewhat a tricky model. So formulating the matrix for customer includes the customer relationship, customer segments, and various channels. Maybe it need not be in the distribution if that's in the hardware involved, but still that's always a tricky model. But what you can do is a dedicated market research, a dedicated customer research. It doesn't mean that you have to go for an online survey or anything, but you have to go on field. Why I'm telling on field is whether you are aware of it or not. Many fake inputs are given on online surveys, especially the youngsters who are very much fascinated about the startups. They always prefer online surveys, online opinions, or anything. Many companies are there. They even give incentives to people who are taking place in online surveys. But unfortunately, the end user, the people who are taking part in survey are not the end user. So we usually get some false negative in majority of the cases. Because of that, some worthy ideas that may be diffused, that may not be implemented, as well as some good for nothing ideas that will be implemented. So when you go for this kind of customer surveys, customer research, make sure that you are going on field, spending some time and get some inputs. So the next one is the revenue streams. Revenue stream is somewhat simple in nature. Most probably 90 to 95% of the time, what you are projecting will be aligned with the actuals. So it basically describes how the company makes money from the target market. And for example, generate revenue to the sale of physical goods, selling continuous services. This is what are various in revenue stream, you can put down all the revenues. All the revenues means, in the case of, you just take the case of Swiggy. As I told you, doesn't mean that the delivery charges or the Swiggy's charges, that's not the only revenue that Swiggy can earn. They can even customize or just like a target specific ads also they can give. They can work as a referral partner based on the even cross selling also can take place. Okay. Need not be the domain of expertise, but still ads can run. All those things brings revenue to that platform that you can't overlook. Okay. So all these things you can put under the revenue stream. So the advantage of putting these things under revenue streams is sometimes these kind of auxiliary revenues may give some sort of future prospects at the end of the day when you analyze the matrices. The primary thing may come out. I think some examples you may have seen in the corporate world also. For example, some of the companies that they have started their operations as a chemical company, but later what happened is they turned out to be a finance company. That also happens. So the primary business sometimes may be deviated to their auxiliary secondary business. That also happens. And this one, software tools like Strategizer, that will greatly help you to devise a model software strategy for this one. That's what I told you. Need not bother much about the olden days board and board tools. Write it on that. But still, I personally believe, as well as I have a fair affinity towards that. Especially if you are working as a team in the sense if you're in an office and working as a team, and if you try to go for a brainstorming, this will greatly help you by using the hardware, conventional hardware thing, that's a whiteboard and marker and all those things. Because 2 to 3 people are there. If you are your partners, one person can take one cells of this matrix and go along with that. So you please keep this Oswald's template in your mind, and this basically gives a fair idea of. Okay, let me admit it. This gives basically a fair idea about the first screening of your ideas, whether that's somewhat viable to you or not. If you get some inputs like it's not at all viable, okay, in that case, what you can do is better you leave that. So this one you can use that just mainly as a this one you can use mainly as a primary screener. Okay, I don't suggest you to take this as the ultimate thing, but this one you can use whatever may be the idea that comes to you. This one you can use as a primary screener to screen your startup ideas. Okay, so why I'm telling is what I found is a lot of startup ideas when it comes to in Kerala startup missions or any of Cafita or that kind of things, even funding, startup funding also. When you go for this, 101 startup ideas. Okay, so how we can streamline it? Generally, we used to go for presentation. If you can present something like this with a whiteboard like this, if that convincing enough, 90% of the time, the person who is evaluating your proposal as well as you yourself can able to understand the viability of that particular project. Okay, because never jump into any startups just because of the people who have already succeeded in that. Okay, that may not be the only criteria for you to start a startup or a small company. You have to research well, you have to analyze well, and you have to think about the return on investment also. This is the main reason I told this one. This Oswald's criteria basically is Oswald's criteria. is just you can use as a screener, first round screener, because it won't give much idea about the return on investment. Okay, I hope since majority of some of you at least you have from finance background, ROI gives a return on investment plays a vital role in any of the investments. For example, if you are anticipating, if you are projecting a ROI of 10%, what does it mean? It's almost like a calculation goes like the bonds. 10% ROE means already the inflation is nearing 7%, and our interest rates, that's also 70% of that. So in that case, 10% return on investment, annual return on investment, makes not that good sense. Unless and until you feel that in a longer run, this will fetch you up. For example, once Mukesh Ambani told, okay, my expected ROE is 20%. I can recover the investment within five years. Good, fine, good. In that kind of, because that's a hardware intensive business, asset intensive, asset rich business. In that, 20% ROE is fair enough. But if your business is not asset intensive, if your business is not like wine, ROE anything less than 25%, not at all attractive. Okay. That's the main reason. When the return on investment seems to be somewhat 40 or 45 or even close that, that's the main reason why these startup companies, after 5 to 6 years, they have become the unicorns and they are moving out as a bigger companies and coming as a listed company. Okay. So at the end of this thing, one more thing I just want to tell you is, you never think that the entire startup business are in profit. The existing, the surviving startup business are in profit. Never think so. The numbers seems to be good because of the seed funds and venture capitalists or series funds. Okay. Though you please keep this thing in mind. For example, if you start a startup company, classic example is Paytm. How many of you think that Paytm is in profit? No, it's in loss. The main strategy nowadays with the foreign funds is somewhat very simple. They will identify a few startups that's not in profit. Startups in profit, they are also there. And they will infuse a lot of funds to that. And with a very big frenzy, that's a very big marketing bias. What happens is, the company may become bigger, no doubt about it. And the sales also may be an inflated sales. After that, that will go public. That will get money from the public. That will be listed. After the IPO, it will be listed. A lot of companies, Paisa Bazaar, Paytm, Zomato, a lot of new gen companies are coming like that. All are in deep loss. So the seed funding, series fundings, venture capitalists, all those things basically makes the ecosystem of startups more attractive. So selecting a startup or starting a startup is not a linear thing. You have to research a lot. You have to think about the viability of getting a funding also, not just your funds, just like starting a grocery shop. You should think about the viability of getting an external funding. Need not be foreign funding. The domestic funds are also available from various sources. Okay. So the idea should be capable enough to harvest funds. Idea should be capable enough to attract funds. Then only the scalability will be fulfilled. Then only it can scale up to new highs, and then only it can be exponentially grown. Okay. I hope things are clear to you. So do you have any queries, any doubts? I think we are running out of time. Any queries, any doubts? Feel free to ask. Yes, Fasi.
Yes, sir. Two questions, please, if you allow me. First, thank you for your presentation and the details. Second, my question is, for the proposition is mainly, and the startup is mainly based on the idea. It's a unique idea. Once we start a startup with a good idea, or the market will duplicate it within 1 or 2 years. The question here is how to protect the idea for the first 5 years at least to make a good profit. This is first question. Second question is regarding the safety margin. Safety margin, you mentioned something regarding 5 to 10%. Okay, this 5 to 10% in addition to inflation and considering the bank interest rate as well, or it is separate? And thank you.
Okay, okay. The first one is about the picking up the profit. One thing you have to keep it in mind that almost 90% of the entire the so-called startup ecosystem. In that 90% of the people, they are cooking up their numbers in their books with external funding or hidden funds. That's a fact, whether anyone admits it or not, because they just want to attract the investors, okay, domestic or foreign investors, whatever it is. That's the one fact. And how to pick up and why it's picking up means the answer is just one, because the startup is mainly started, majority of these startup are commenced by the people under the age of 30, or even to say it's 35 to say. Okay, and the mentors generally, all the startup generally have some mentors. Okay, so for example, some bigger mentors are there, just like to say, need not be bigger, small, like Rabindranath Kamath also. So he is basically an edtech company CEO, CFO. Once he invested in something, some startup to say, some AR, VR startup, augmented reality startup. What exactly that startup gets is, since he is the mentor, the first business itself is okay with them, because Kamath is running an edtech company, and these people are making augmented reality, virtual reality products. So obviously, Kamath will be the first client for them. So that way only, presently, almost all the startup companies are making profits in the initial periods. Okay. Apart from that, rest of the things remains the same for generating the revenues. And about the second question is about the margin of safety. That's whether that's excluded the inflation and the anticipated things. That's what I told. We have to consider about the inflation also, but inflation rise we can't offset against this one. That's what it is. This one seems to be a linear estimation only. Okay, this 5 to 10% is that's outside the inflation. Inflation is a separate thing, and if we consider inflation, the things will become much more complex. That's what I'm not discussing much about the inflation on that, but unfortunately, with the ROI, return on investment, without the inflation figures or bond yield, there is no sense on discussing that. That's the only reason why I mentioned about inflation. That I think it's clear for you, Fauzi, I believe.
Yes, sir, it's clear. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. So anyone else, do you have any queries? Feel free to ask, nothing like that. It's an evening chat session. Anything else I can help you with? Yes, Avinash. Yes, Abhinash, you have something to ask, right? Anyone else? Okay, if your queries are already resolved, let me let me assume that not that much queries in that. Okay, feel free to contact me, or happy to help you out. This is my mail ID and this is my contact number. As a IIBM students, happy to help you out. And if you have no other further queries, we shall wind up the session. Let me check the chats also. Okay, sure. I shall share the PPT. Unfortunately, I don't know where to share. Okay, anyway, I will share with the IIBM, and you can get in touch with them. Okay. So thanks for being with me, for spending this much time, and wish you a happy weekend. See you next week. Till then, bye from Anup. Thank you.